Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to this May 29, 2014 edition of Nightcast. Tonight, the opening story comes to us from India, and rather gruesome story. BBC is going to give us a pre-story warning. I'm going to also give you that warning. This video opens with the arrest over hanged Indian girls. At least 3 men, including one police officer, have been arrested after 2 teenage girls were gang raped and then hung from a tree in India.
Disturbing images.
Wednesday morning brought a gruesome discovery to the village of Katra in northern India. The bodies of 2 teenage cousins, one aged 14, the other 15, were found hanging from a mango tree. A post-mortem later confirmed the girls had been gang raped and had died from hanging. The cousins, who were from a low caste, had left home to walk into the fields because they had no toilet.
We were ready to go to the police station. Then a police officer came to me and said the girls are hanging from a tree.
Villagers say at first the police refused to investigate. So they staged a protest under the tree and refused to cut the bodies down.
Whatever happened, it was very wrong. It's a very serious issue. We are fully prepared and we are with the victim's family. We will take the strictest action against the culprits.
Despite new laws against sexual violence in India, rape remains a problem. The Indian media has likened these killings to the sort of violence that happened in medieval India, where low-caste women were seen as the property of higher-caste men who didn't have to account for their actions. Joanna Jolly, BBC News.
Okay, friends, we opened up with probably the most gruesome story in tonight's news. There is more bad news. There's also, at the end tonight, some very, very light news I have for us as we'll be closing up the Thursday night edition of Nightcast. In Egypt, this one not quite so bad, but Orla Gugorin is going to tell us from Cairo how there was no doubt about the scale of the victory for General Sisi, but that Egypt's new leader, I shouldn't say he's given up the generalship, he's now the president, their new leader in Egypt. He now faces a credibility gap, you're going to hear Ms. Gorin say to us, because voter turnout was only around 45%.
Well, I think the big issue for Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is not his victory. That was never in doubt. And state media today are saying that he has won by as much as 95% of the total vote. We won't have official figures for perhaps a few more days, but there is no doubt. This is a resounding endorsement from those who voted, and that's the key point. The problem for Sisi, and indeed for Egypt, is that a very large number of voters actually stayed away from the polls. The estimates we are getting at the moment is that turnout was less than 45%. Now, Sisi himself, in the final days before the vote, had been appealing for 40 million Egyptians to come to the polls. He said he wanted a turnout of 80%. And these figures are critical because it leaves Sisi with a credibility gap before he even begins. He wanted the strongest possible mandate from the largest number of voters so that he could claim to be acting on behalf of all Egyptians. And there is another critical figure in all of this, and that is 52%. That is the number of the electorate that came out to vote the last time around in 2012. At that stage, they chose the Islamist President Mohamed Morsi, and of course that is the leader, the elected leader, who was removed by Sisi himself. So he wanted this very large, very strong endorsement, this very strong mandate to prove to the world that that action was not a coup, that he was acting on behalf of the entire nation. Now what he has instead is a very strong but partial endorsement.
Friends, before we go on to our next story, you know, that first story is still spinning around in my head with like, ay, 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 what a story. You know, the first story about the rape there in India and hanging, the two teenage girls hanging from the tree from, you know, they've passed, here's a point I think we should well consider. Even though India passed laws saying it's against the law to rape, you know, God has a very similar law. Well, God has the same law. He says it's not only against the law to rape, but it's even against the law to have sex outside marriage. And then today we're in a sad and sick situation in the United States, especially United States, where laws are being passed to exonerate perversion, where it's not only against God's law for man to lie with man or woman with woman, but the United States wants to pass laws saying, oh, you perverts can marry one another. You know, and one of the strangest things about that is, you know, marriage has been known as something between a man and a woman, a husband and a wife. And there was one report I was reading through earlier today that talked about some man divorcing his husband. And I thought, well, wait a minute. So he must have considered himself the wife in a two-man situation. I've always wondered, well, when you got two people of the same sex, how are you going to determine which one's the husband and which one's the wife? Is that something these two perverts agree on in advance together? Or, you know, but what, you know, it begs the question, because when you get into something that is, as God labels it, perverse, there's no logic, there's no, you can't make logic out of perversion. I mean, perversion is off the map. It's illogical. It's illogical. But this thing, this thing in India, they pass laws saying it's against the law to do what these men did to those two young girls, gang raped her. But, you know, men ignore God's laws. So, you know, like in the United States, the leaders of the United States, especially its president, has been saying, oh, well, we'll just pass a law saying, you know, this or that, a law. They want to do gun laws. One thing you can see from this India and from the whole history of mankind, and from mankind in disobedience to its creator, even the Israelites, and especially the tribe of Judah, that for a long time did a little better than the lost 10 tribes. They continued to keep the Sabbath, so they kept their identity. But still, God had to let them both houses go into captivity because of disobedience. So it's in mankind. God made within the human flesh, he made enmity against our Creator and his laws. And the point I'm making, I think, for the United States here is that just because a country passes a law, well, you're decent people that would have done well without that law. For example, gun laws. If you let decent people keep a gun and they're only going to use it against somebody that's breaking in their house or committing a crime around their person where there's not a police officer handy. Someone breaks in your house, they're about to kill your wife. The man grabs his gun, shoots the guy. Especially if it's at night, you know, God says that's no problem. But some country that wants to take away the rights of an honest person to pass a law that says you can't do this, well, the criminals, they're not going to obey. One of the definitions of a criminal is somebody who doesn't obey the law. They violate laws. You pass a law that says you can't have a gun, they're going to get one anyway. I didn't mean to get on that subject. It's just the point is that laws, you pass a law, that in and of itself doesn't stop crime or sin. That first story, a really sad one to see, when people commit that kind of crime against their own people. And The family yesterday that stoned their daughter, the husband, now that story gets a little more, that's kind of a similar story in a way. The family stoned the daughter in India. No, I'm sorry, that's Pakistan. They stoned the daughter in Pakistan because she married a man that the family didn't approve of. And in today's news, I don't have video on this, but I can just tell you the man just made a statement today saying, this is almost incredible, but the man made a statement as if we're supposed to feel empathy or sadness for the man when he says he killed his first wife to marry this gal. The more comes out about this story, the sicker that one gets. The news in the last day or two were sounding like some kind of sad and sick soap opera here. All right, let's go on for some other news. Here's an accident that occurred off the shores of Japan where a tanker exploded. We've got some aerial footage on this. I believe there may not be any commentary with it. I'll stop if I get interrupted. But what happened here, one person is missing after an oil tanker exploded off Japan's coast, officials there say. 7 other people were reportedly injured in the incident on board the 998-ton Shakomaru, with 4 suffering serious burns. This aerial footage shows Coast Guard vessels attempting to control the fire near the port off Japan where this happened. Its cause is still unknown. All right, friends, here's news on Ukraine, and it's kind of shocking. It's kind of continuing violence there. Amateur footage posted online appears to show the aftermath of a Ukrainian military helicopter being shot down, killing 14 people. This is from today's news. I know something like that happened just the other day, too. This video, which cannot be independently verified, nonetheless show plumes of black smoke rising near Sloviansk, where Ukraine's ongoing president says pro-Russian rebels downed the aircraft. The BBC's Mark Lowen said that the incident was a huge blow to the Ukrainian military.
A huge blow to the Ukrainian military. 14 soldiers dead as this helicopter was shot down near Sloviansk. We understand that one of the 14 was an army general, and the president has said that the helicopter was transporting personnel to a military base for a change of shift when it was shot down by the rebels. Now, Sloviansk has long been the sort of epicenter of heavy fighting in eastern Ukraine. It fell to rebel control early on in this conflict, and it is now one of those areas that the Ukrainian president-elect is vowing to push forward and to try to retake.
Okay, thank you, Mark Lowen. Friends in China, you know, they've been having explosions there, and they've now set up some security checks that look like you're going through an airport security check. But these are just out in the Chinese square near the Chinese capital, Beijing. Here's Britt Yup with the story on this.
It looks like airport security, with metal detectors and a physical check by security personnel. It's a subway station in Beijing. It's one of several where the authorities have introduced anti-terror measures following recent violent attacks in northwestern Xinjiang. And it means huge queues outside some of the busiest underground stations in the world.
I don't get a sense of security from this, but instead I feel more and more annoyed. Waiting and going through a queue like this long every day can only irritate people. There's nothing else good about it. It just feels like we're wasting time.
This may be fruitful to a certain extent, but it is also a waste of our time. But this is all definitely worthwhile, because all those terrorists and the violent incidents could create massive consequences.
Beijing's subway system has nearly 200 stations, with commuters making around 10 million journeys a day. There are also more armed police on the streets. The state-run China Daily newspaper described it as a three-tier protocol covering the skies, subways and streets. Brit Yip, BBC News.
And friends, for the closing tonight, we've got a light story. This will be off until Sunday night. This is our Thursday night. We have no Friday night or Saturday night report. We are on the weekend on another channel with a special weekend church service. But otherwise, nightcast. We're off until Sunday night. Now, our last story, as I said, is kind of a light one here tonight. Actually, before I do that one, I've got one. I don't have any notes on it, but I've just got some video from a storm chaser, where via the BBC, where the storm chaser was struck by lightning. Let's take a look at that. And there's no commentary with this. It's just that you will hear the background noise of the lightning in a moment. And this lightning struck a storm chaser. They're going to play it again here, one more time. All right, I apologize. I don't have any notes to tell you any details about this, friends, but at the end of this video, they'll show you the pavement where the lightning struck. There it is, right there. Okay, now, in this next video piece, kind of a light one, I think you may enjoy this. This is a light one, and it's funny in a certain way, and yet it depicts one of the lessons that God is having man write about man. And this one involves, well, some of the rudeness of man. And there's a group that is fighting with rude drivers. They're fighting rude drivers with politeness, is the way the headline of this story goes, in Russia.
Rude people. They're everywhere, even behind the wheel. So what happens when you try to fight rudeness with politeness? In Russia, a group of activists called Stop Ham, or Stop Rude People, has been trying to change dodgy driving one motorist at a time.
Politeness is part and parcel of a movement. If we call ourselves Stop Rudeness, we can't then be rude to other people.
Heated exchanges are filmed and stickers are placed on people's cars. It's a blatant form of public shaming, and it can be dangerous.
Some drivers are very violent. I've been threatened by a firearm dozens of times, but we want to build a civil society and to make democracy work. So that is a conscious choice that we make.
Social media is used to organise so-called raids. The group says money made from hundreds of millions of views on YouTube covers the cost of stickers and replacing broken camera equipment. But they also get private funding from public people.
We do have some supporters among public servants and government officials, but they help us in a private capacity. We've been praised by the President and the Prime Minister, but it didn't involve any financial help.
Putin's endorsement has helped the group's relations with the real traffic police, but they insist they're not too close to the establishment.
We're so popular because we're honest and transparent. We don't do any favors for important people or government cars. People who have bigger cars and more money shouldn't think that they have a greater freedom to do anything they want.
Орел 112. Они не хотят ходить. Раз служебную машину сейчас стикер приляпали.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that, friends. These videos showing the heated exchanges with drivers have been watched 200 million times on YouTube. The group behind this has even met President Vladimir Putin. It was Anne-Marie Tomczyk of the BBC Trending who spoke to the founder of the group, and this video was produced by Neil Meads. Watch it while you can, because I didn't get licensing yet for the music, and we may have to, that may get that part of the video canned later. Anyway, friends, that's it for tonight, this Thursday night, May 29, 2014 edition of Nightcast. God willing and the creek don't rise, we'll be back again Sunday night with the day, and we'll cover Friday and Sabbath too. Sunday night, the current news related to the Bible and prophecy here on Nightcast. Till next time, this is your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying so long, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.